to The Writer's Dream. The Writer's Dream is a forum where authors can talk about how they write their books, how they publish their books, and how they market their books. We've had about 50 authors on the show already. Our authors write in all genre, and they are able to give you tips about their writing experiences, their publishing experiences, and their marketing experiences. You can find us on LTV. Just look at the program guide to see when it's aired. Also, we are on Cablevision all over Long Island. Again, it's Channel 20. Look at the program guide. We are on YouTube, and we are on Facebook. And if you would like to be on The Writer's Dream, you need to contact me through the Facebook page. So today's guest is Toby Speed. And Toby Speed is the author of Death Over Easy, as well as some children's books where she started her career. So welcome, Toby. It's really nice to have you here.
Hi, Linda. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, you're welcome. So you started out writing children's stories, and then you moved on to writing a mystery. Tell us about how you started your career.
All right. My first love was children's books. I have 3 children, and when they were little, I would read to them every day and spend an awful lot of time in the library with them, picking books. And I've always had many favorite children's books myself. And I said, I can do this. And I actually began my career by writing short stories for magazines, such as Highlights, Turtle, Jack and Jill, and other magazines like that. And eventually I segued into picture books.
Well, I understand that these are 2 prize-winning books, Two Cool Cows and Brave Potatoes. In fact, Two Cool Cows is an American bestseller pick of the list and an IRA CBC Children's Choice book, and Brave Potatoes was on Publishers Weekly and the New York Times Children's Bestseller list. That's pretty prestigious.
Yes, thanks.
What's Two Cool Cows about?
Two Cool Cows tells the behind-the-scenes story of why the cow jumped over the moon. It's actually a couple of cows who go on a jump over the moon and meet up with a lot of other cows there, and it tells the story of what goes on the moon.
With cows.
With cows.
Okay, Elsie. And Brave Potatoes?
Brave Potatoes is about vegetables that are on exhibit at a county fair. It's about the prize potatoes who are the main exhibit, and they save a lot of other vegetables from being used in a chowder by an evil chef. My daydream about the tomato that took over Cleveland is not so far-fetched, right? You have potatoes that are saving other vegetables. Right.
But these are the kinds of imaginative things that really make great children's books. So what caused you to do the transition then into mystery?
Well, I've always loved reading mysteries myself, and actually this first book, Death Over Easy, took me many years to write. It took about 14 years for me to do from start to finish. And during that time, I was still writing children's books. But I always loved mysteries. I loved the idea of writing about a puzzle. I had a dream of writing a book that was set on Long Island. I wanted to write about people and quirky characters, and I liked the idea of planting clues and figuring out which are the red herrings, which are the real clues. So it was always in the back of my mind as I was involved in my children's book career. And eventually I gave it a try. And as I said, it was a very long process writing it because it was a totally different genre, and I had to really reinvent some of my writing habits and learn some new skills.
Yeah, it was pretty similar for me because I was really never a trained writer. So when I decided to put all of those life experiences together, because I'm listening to you and I'm really seeing the similarities, and I think this is true of most writers, that you have these life experiences and eventually there's a point at which it all gels and you say, you come up with characters, there are settings that you love, and then there's the genre, which is for us, I know because I met you in Sisters in Crime, which we'll talk about in a minute, is that puzzle and that clue and that solving that mystery. And then finally it all gels and you come up with something. But I took writing courses because I really didn't know what I was doing. So that really helped me. But so why, there's a plane on the cover.
Yes.
and I know your story, and I really want you to tell the story about how you got into flying.
Okay. Well, let me say first that when I began Death Over Easy, that's before I learned how to fly, and I certainly was not thinking about learning how to fly. I was terrified of flying. That would have been the last goal I would have had on Earth. I started out just wanting to write a mystery about a character in a small town and other characters. I got a little ways into it, 5 or 6 or 7 chapters. The story was not progressing as I had hoped, and I suddenly had kind of a flash where I realized that there were going to be pilots in the book. My main character, Emma Trace, her dad and her uncles are pilots, and they walked into the story, and I could not let them go. Unfortunately, I knew nothing about flying. I had no desire to fly. There were no pilots in my family. And I made a phone call to, I made a few phone calls to try to find a pilot I could talk to just for research, just to get some background information so I could write the flying scenes. And I was led to an air show pilot on Long Island, Michael Mancuso, who flies in air shows all over the East Coast.
I've probably seen him.
You probably have, you know, at all different air
Jones
shows.
Beach.
Probably Jones Beach, yes.
Memorial Day.
Yeah. And I went out and talked to him, and at the time, I had one of my coworkers from my day job who had agreed to go for a flight with him and come down and tell me what it was like so I could write about it. And and it didn't quite work out that way, because after I talked to him, he invited me over to see his airplane, which I actually have a picture of back here. I don't know if the camera's showing it, but he had an airplane called an Extra, and it's a very lightweight composite material. It's not metal. It's very swift and smooth and does aerobatics easily. And I fell in love with it when I looked at it, and I ended up going for a flight with him, which is what that picture is showing. And as soon as I landed from the flight, I said to him, "Am I too old to take flying lessons?" And he said, "Not at all." And that's what I did. I signed up for flying lessons. I got my pilot's license, and I followed that with 10 months of aerobatic lessons. So I
you're a
actually
stunt
learned
flyer as well?
Yes, yes. I did
Oh, I am
rolls. I did
impressed.
loops. I flew upside down, knife edge flight, all kinds of flying.
What's it like?
Very exciting. It's wonderful. It focuses all your concentration on the moment you're living in. You need to be aware of everything around you. You're operating in 3 dimensions, very unlike driving or walking, which we just do in 2 dimensions. It's quite a thrill, and it's very satisfying to be able to do maneuvers properly, which I can't say I did very much of,
Well, you're
but there were
here.
times I'm here. But I mean, it takes a sort of precision to do.
Yeah,
Even-
I get that satisfaction from skiing.
Okay, yes, right. That's a similar kind of thing,
Yes,
I imagine.
because
You
you're
have
going
to-
very fast, and you really have to be aware of everything that's around you. And it is a thrill. It's
Right.
an excitement like nothing else I do. I'm not afraid of flying. I love flying, and I love flying in small planes, but the idea of flying the plane myself is very daunting.
Well, you know, actually, that's what made it easier for me. I was very afraid of flying commercial planes, small planes, all kinds of planes. Once I actually got into the pilot's seat and I had control, and I learned how the controls are used. I learned how to maneuver myself in 3-dimensional space. And I became aware of what all the sounds and sensations are that are involved in flying. It became much better for me. When you're on a plane that someone else is flying and the engine noise changes and there's a bump, and there's turbulence and things move, you automatically say to yourself, what's that? What's happening?
Yes.
But when you're flying the plane, you have a much better understanding.
Sure, yes, exactly. So tell me about your main character, Emma Trace. How old is
Okay.
she?
Emma Trace is about 35 in the book. She has grown up in a family of aerial daredevils, bungee jumpers, pilots, gamblers, and people who, in general, take a lot of risk. She is risk averse, and the plot really involves two things. One, it's a regular murder mystery. The short order cook in her favorite breakfast spot is murdered, and the crime is tied to Emma because police find her library card at the scene of the crime. And also they find out there's some bad blood between Emma and the short order cook. So this gets her involved and gets her started on a chase, an adventure around Long Island, a lot of Long Island scenery. She comes across many sleazy characters and
On Long Island?
on
No, can't be.
and eventually tracks down the murderer. So that's part of the book. Also, while that is going on, she is trying to win a bet with her family that will keep her out of the cockpit of an airplane. If she loses the bet, she's going to end up flying in one of these airplanes that she hates. So that is the subplot of the story.
That's a little bit of your own personal
Yes.
angst about flying originally.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely. She is a lot like me that way, more so. I mean, she doesn't like even getting up on a stepladder. So
I'd rather get in a plane than get up on a step ladder.
True,
I
they're
can
different.
relate to that. And then the setting, Long Island. My first book also is set in Long Island. The second one is New York City. What is it about Long Island that's so attractive?
you know,
Is it just us who live here who love it so much?
I love it. I love the culture. I love the people. I love the bagel shops and all the shopping and the personalities of people. I have not actually lived very extensively in other places.
Yeah.
I've spent time there. I've spent summers in Pennsylvania, and I've traveled some around the country, and there is no place like Long Island. And I guess I really wanted to capture the flavor of how people speak, how they deal with traffic, how they, I don't know, just approach life, which I think is unique here.
I think so too. I think there's a sharpness, and there's a. I find that the people, although in certain situations you can find it very abrasive, the people have the ability to analyze a situation very quickly and react very quickly. Reaction
Yes.
time here is very quick, because if you go and you visit elsewhere, and everyone says this,
True.
you're sitting there waiting, oh, when is this, when they can come
Right.
on, move. And driving here is actually a challenge. When I went to Italy, and I rented a car there, and my friend said, you're going to drive in Italy? And so I drove in Italy, and I came back, and they said, how was the driving? And I said, well, if you can do the Belt Parkway on a Saturday night, you can drive in Italy.
That's right.
Because everything here is like, out here on the East End, it's a bit quieter, but I think the basic culture of Long Island is this ability to really just grasp a situation quickly and react to it in a different way. And that's why I think we have so many artists and writers here, because people see things in shades of colors that nobody else sees.
Right, I agree with you, and I think it's a very vibrant, very alive kind of environment. I don't live in Port Jefferson myself, but I live near there, and I wanted to set my story in a town that was very village-like or town-like, because I needed my characters to come in contact with each other very often. And I love Port Jefferson, I love the harbor, and I had some ideas about how I might use that actual scenery in the book, which I did. So people who live in this area will probably recognize things.
Sure. But there's so many
yeah.
towns like that on Long Island. There's Port Jefferson, there's
Yes.
Northport, and even in Nassau County, Roslyn, Great Neck, they all have their own little flavor. And if you look into the history is so interesting on Long Island. There's so many wealthy people who had estates here. One of my favorite places on Long Island is Bayard Cutting Arboretum. Nobody knows what, they think the
Right.
cutting has something to do with plants, and it's the Bayard Cutting family. And the mansion itself is, you go and you visit it and you look at the pictures, and there's just so much rich history here. And then
That's right.
whaling, and I mean, we go back to actually before the Revolutionary War. It's just such an interest, and physically beautiful.
Yes,
This is
true.
beautiful.
And I tried to bring some of that history into the story also. I have Emma living in a former shipbuilder's home in Port Jeff, and I do refer to some of the shipbuilding history a little bit. It's not very history heavy, but
Yeah.
yes, that is one great thing about Long Island.
Yeah, it's,
Yes.
well, I don't want to really leave talking about the book because we, you know, it's something that I love. I love flying. I love mysteries. Let's talk about a little bit about where we met, and that was in Sisters in Crime, better known
Right.
as SINC, SINC. So,
Right.
what do you think about SINC?
I love it. It's led to so many great opportunities. Well, of course, being on your show here, getting to learn about forensics also from you, and meeting some of the other authors in the group who all have their own special areas of expertise. We have former cops and
Right.
detectives.
Exciting
and
meetings.
Very exciting meetings. We have wonderful speakers at almost every meeting.
Yeah, I'm doing the one this month, and I'm going to do it on the use of DNA analysis to solve ancient mysteries. So I'm going to talk about like language isolates and, I mean, really like esoteric types of things. And I used that concept in my third book, where DNA was used to link the bones at an archaeological dig to African ancestors.
Oh, very
So,
cool.
you know, there's all kinds of things. And then when the police come and they talk about, we had a head homicide detective from Nassau County speak. Was that John Dolan? He was like a homicide?
Yes, yes.
And he was so interesting, and he gave us some real insights about the serial killer on Jones Beach. You know,
Right.
and that whole stretch of, it was really kind of Gilgo.
Right,
So it's
and
exciting.
It is, and he also gave us, and he and other speakers also have given us a lot that we can use in our books. He talked to us, John Dolan talked about errors that criminals and investigators both make that can lead to the breaking of a case. And it really got me thinking, and it actually helped me with a part of my book.
Sure, because when you, I don't know if any other genre is like this, but when you write a mystery, everything has to dovetail. Everything that you talked about in the book has to somehow play out in the solution of the crime. You can't talk about things and then leave them in the air. And then you have to make sure that, in one of my books, a bicyclist ends up as part of the solution of, it's like the climax scene. And when I wrote it, the person I wrote it, who was mentoring me while I wrote it, said, you can't just drop this bicycle from heaven onto this scene. You have to somehow telegraph it. So you have to think about telegraphing things. You have to think about red herrings. You have to think about everything dovetailing. And so to have a police detective tell you how they solve a case, this is really essential.
Right, that's true. I'm also finding, now that I'm writing my second book in the series, Death Under the Radar, I'm using a new kind of software that will help me track all of that stuff because, as you mentioned, it's very complex. When you're writing a mystery, you need to be aware of all the clues and the red herrings and when they were dropped in and that they need some answering later on, some sort of addressing, even if it's to discount them. They need to be addressed. And
I use a long piece of paper, and I have like a flow chart. But you have software. I have to talk to you
that's
about
what I
that.
did the first time. I did that the first time, and it still was very difficult for
Yeah.
me. And there were also conversations that people had where something might be mentioned or not mentioned, and I often couldn't remember where things were first mentioned or not mentioned. So writing a mystery is an example of writing something that's not linear. It's very difficult to write a mystery from beginning to end. It